Hey, rock stars, if your fab shop's overwhelmed or your supplier's missing deadlines, that's not just frustrating, it's costing you real money. That's why you call HyperFab. Based in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, and trusted across North America, they deliver custom metal fabrication for industries where precision and speed matter most. Construction, oil and gas, manufacturing, and agriculture. From fiber laser cutting and CNC bending to welding, assembly, and finishing, they do it all in-house with fast turnarounds, tight tolerances, and no handoffs. One prototype, full production, no problem. HyperFab shows up when others can't and delivers when others don't. Head to www.hyperfab.com or call Colin Harms at 1-403-308-3308. Fabrication without compromise. That's the HyperFab edge. Welcome to episode 254 of the Business Development Podcast. And today I'm joined by the incredible Kapil Kalra, a powerhouse entrepreneur whose journey takes us from a small grocery store in Dartmouth to building one of Canada's most innovative wellness brands, Naturemary. Kapil is all hustle, all heart, and his energy is absolutely contagious. This conversation is packed with real talk, big wins, tough lessons, and the kind of inspiration that every entrepreneur needs. Stick with us. You don't want to miss this episode.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 254 of the Business Development Podcast. And today I bring you a total rock star. From the streets of Dartmouth to the bustling landscape of Montreal, Kapil Kalra's journey is a compelling narrative of entrepreneurial brilliance and relentless innovation. After forging his path through the consumer electronics industry, Kapil returned to his roots in Halifax, contributing to his father's business while simultaneously cultivating his own venture in computer wholesale. In 2008, he made a strategic move to Calgary, where over the next 14 years, he transformed his business into a multi-million-dollar powerhouse in the realms of computer and consumer electronic wholesale and export. In 2018, Kapil, fueled by an unwavering entrepreneurial spirit, embarked on a new frontier, co-founding Naturemary with his wife. They ventured into uncharted territory, introducing terpene-based products that would revolutionize the wellness and skincare industry. This pioneering approach served as a compelling alternative to CBD and cannabis, and quickly gained acclaim. The year 2023 marked a pivotal moment for Kapil and Naturemary as their exponential growth propelled them to the forefront of Canada's natural health, beauty, and pharmacy channels. Kapil's strategic vision not only solidified Naturemary's position domestically, but also facilitated the expansion into international markets through significant export deals. His legacy is not just one of financial success, but also of reshaping the narrative around wellness, a testament to Kapil's commitment to innovation, impact, and excellence. Kapil, it's an honor to finally have you on the show.
Kelly, I really appreciate you having me. Thank you for your patience, and I'm so happy this is going to work.
My gosh, just for the listeners of this show, believe it or not, this show has been over a year in the making with just, frankly, technical issues, trying to sync up Kapil's busy schedule with being able to come on the show. Because if you know anything about him, he is on a plane, it feels like every week somewhere. And then the last couple times in a row, we ran into technical difficulties. So it's just meant to be. Today is the one, dude.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I was really having my fingers crossed this morning saying, you know what? No issues. We've finally had the time and here we are. So thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
My gosh. Yeah. I've been following you for a long time. It feels like a really, really long time. And I'm always impressed with what is going on. It feels like every single week there is a new announcement from Naturemary, a new major milestone, a new export deal, something amazing closing. And even like in this conversation before we got started, you're like, hey, something huge literally just happened today. I can't talk about it yet, but it's massive. And I'm just like, what isn't massive, Kapil? What isn't massive that's happening for Naturemary right now?
Oh my God. You know, the scale of what I used to say was important and a milestone is kind of blurred a little bit now. So I just have to believe in trusting the process and keep pushing forward. And, you know, great things happen with the relentless work ethic.
Yes, and absolutely. And it's like, there's no replacement for hard work, right?
Yep.
Me and you both know this, and we talked about it briefly before this show, but like you just have to hustle. You really do. And I think I've had so many people, and I don't know about you, it's like, obviously we talk to a lot of people in the mental health side of things and like the coaching side of things. And a lot of the view is like, and one of the challenges I guess that I've always struggled with is I always believed you have to work really hard to achieve success. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, like I've been told on one hand that like, I probably need to unlearn that because I can have success without killing myself. But being a kid who didn't grow up wealthy, who didn't come from a wealthy family. I came from a very middle-class family with parents who worked their asses off to put a roof over our head and food on the table. I watched them work really hard to achieve anything. And so like, I've always felt like you have to have good work ethic to succeed. What are your thoughts on that? I know we've both probably talked to enough coaches that say like, hey, you can succeed either way. But it's like, it's really hard to see it and be like, could I do that without like killing myself?
Well, you know, Kelly, it's funny. So I grew up very similar, you know, in Dartmouth. We grew up on Gaston Road. Wasn't the most favorable community and area. My parents were new immigrants and obviously entrepreneurship was a channel and an opening for them, particularly my dad at the time. So yeah, I mean, you know, growing up that way, I definitely learned by watching them through, again, just unrelenting hustle and work ethic. My dad first opened a small little Indian grocery store in Dartmouth to satisfy the very small community that was there. And yeah, again, you know, watching him filling up bags of lentils and rice and sort of, you know, stocking shelves and being there as a, you know, 4 or 5 year old, watching my parents working super late at night and, you know, really early in the morning. So I definitely come from that as well. And, you know, I think that, again, where I came from and sort of how I grew up really solidified that aspect of work ethic. And again, getting to the point where you say, you know, that unrelenting work ethic, sometimes, you know, that's what I saw. And so that's what I thought needed to happen. But, you know, I think as I grew older, it's about strategic growth and strategic, you know, really putting the right amount of time into, you know, into your effort. So yeah, no, I'm definitely there with you for sure.
Yeah, it is a tough one because there is a huge part of me still, and I don't care how many coaches I talk to, how many people, like mindset people who are like, Kelly, like you need to change the way you think about it. I don't think I would be here today had I not had that work ethic, had I not had that, you know what, I'm going to hustle, even when I'm going to be up before everyone else, and I'm going to go to bed after everyone goes to bed. Right. That hustle has gotten me so far. Absolutely. And so to negate that and say that I could have achieved what I've achieved or that you could achieve what you've achieved without doing that, I don't know if I believe it, man. I don't know. I struggle with it.
Well, Kelly, you know, so it's funny that you say that. So my previous business, my consumer electronic business, when we first started, you know, we were really dealing with a lot of the inventory, bringing it into warehouses, having teams process these loads and sort of rebuilding pallets and, you know, creating spreadsheets around it and then, you know, having to go out there and sell the inventory. You know, in between that time, I created a brokering division of that as well, where I really wanted to do less of the hands-on with my team. And I really wanted to sort of sit back, you know, kind of close deals as a broker, you know, bring party A and party B together and, you know, take a small commission in between. You know, I realized that one, it wasn't sustainable because, you know, what I thought was I wanted to, you know, do less work, but, you know, I was creating more risk for myself in terms of not doing that work and sort of, you know, not being just the middleman between the deal, but, you know, also, you know, having the inventory. So, you know, it did bite me a little bit where I thought, okay, you know, I can kind of, you know, take my foot off the gas a little bit and, you know, try to restructure it. But again, you know, fast forward now, I mean, it's nothing but hard work that gets the job done. And yeah, that's what I've relearned again. So definitely a fine balance between the two.
Yes. So maybe there isn't, man. Maybe there is no replacement for hard work. And dude, I just want to start this off by saying, like, watching you do what you do is a total inspiration for everyone who follows you. For everyone who follows you.
Thank you.
Watching your hustle, your work ethic, your motivation, and not just your motivation, but like your amazingly positive, uplifting attitude and posts, dude. They go so far. And just from me to you, I appreciate you. And I appreciate that you do that for the entrepreneurial community.
You have no idea what that means to me. You know, I use a lot of my posts and a lot of my content for my own motivation. I know what I struggle with, and I know what so many other entrepreneurs struggle with. And sometimes it's just a pat on the back and say, hey, you're doing okay. You know, mistakes happen. You know, we don't look at them as losses. We look at them as lessons. So much of that happens on a daily basis that, you know, we need a bit of that push. And for me personally, you know, that is my driving force. You know, I do it for everybody else, but I do it for me first. And that's what gets me through each and every one of my days, whether it's, you know, an announcement of an award or a new vendor or a new partnership, or if it's just a lesson, you know, if it's something that we've gone through that I know other entrepreneurs are facing, it almost feels like my duty. It's like, I've got to do this, you know, for others. And I get so many messages, so many calls, texts, DMs all the time. Just thank you, saying, hey, listen, like, you have no idea how this post helped me get through my day or get me through my week or get me through a situation that I was dealing with, you know, that I thought was at the end of the world, you know, it was the end of the world. And, you know, I've even since, you know, branched out and started this new initiative called the CPG Circle, where I'm really supporting, you know, emerging brands and emerging entrepreneurs. And yeah, man, I just feel like it's my duty. And, you know, I take something positive for myself, and I'm just blessed that others can get some vibe off of it.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship, as me and you know, can be very lonely. And the wins can be few and far between. There can be long gaps, right? Totally. So you really need that. You need that like uplifting stuff to keep you in it, to keep your head in the game, because it's so much of a mental game. Entrepreneurship is a mental challenge, not necessarily like just a life challenge, but there's so many, you're fighting yourself more than you're fighting anyone else 90% of the time.
Well, it's funny because, you know, Sonia, you know, my wife, my partner for the last almost 30 years, and my business partner, I mean, she is the total opposite of me. Everything that can go wrong in her mind will go wrong. And, you know, she sometimes tells me I'm being too much. It's like, you know, you can't be that positive. And if I didn't have that, I don't know what I would do. So we bring a fine balance to each other. I'm sure she'd have some additional comments on that. But, you know, again, it's what helps me and what drives me. And I know it's what drives numerous entrepreneurs as well. So I know she's a scientist first, not an entrepreneur first. So she has a completely different mindset in terms of, you know, testing and, you know, things going wrong and preparing for that. Whereas I'm like, okay, you know what? It doesn't work today. It's going to work tomorrow. And we just move on to the next task. And that's, again, what gets me through.
I absolutely love it. And I love that you're a husband and wife team just killing it out there. And I definitely want to spend some time with that today, because I'm not sure everyone can do that.
For sure. Oh, it's tricky, for sure. Can be tricky.
The level of backlash you get from your spouse is a very different level.
That's the one you're going to eat the most from, for sure. It's so true. Yeah. You know, there might be other people in the office that may be a little bit more timid in terms of making comments on the way things going, but there's no holding back when it comes to that type of relationship.
No, there is not. And, you know, it's funny. Me and my fiance, we're not business partners, but she will not hold back from telling me when I am doing something very wrong.
Right? It's so true.
And the crap thing is she's right too much.
And you know what? I won't get it right now, but maybe I will do. She'll definitely say the same.
Me and you are very much the same. I live up here in the clouds, and every once in a while I need someone to kick the stool out from under me.
Bring it down a little bit. It's like, hold on a second. But yeah, no, it's what gets me through, and it's what helps me. And again, like I said, I'm just blessed that it helps so many others. So it's
totally. Dude, take me back to being a kid. You know, you've gotten to watch entrepreneurship since you were a little kid. You grew up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Canada, Atlantic Canada. Beautiful. I love Atlantic Canada, by the way. I've only ever been to Halifax, but blew my mind. I was like, this is part of Canada? This is amazing.
It is. It's truly a very special place. So yeah, I mean, growing up, I was born in Halifax. I was about 2 years old. We moved across the bridge to Dartmouth. At that time, Dartmouth was not the most favorable place. It had the moniker of the dark side, a little bit cheaper real estate, you know, and all the stuff that comes along with that. You know, growing up, I grew up in a very loving household. You know, we didn't have much at all. but I never felt that. My mom and dad always made me feel that we had everything. I watched my dad work really hard. He was a taxi driver when he first moved to Nova Scotia. When he first came to Canada, he moved to Quebec City in 74, moved to Nova Scotia in 79. And right away, just started building a business. And that was always sort of his passion, working for himself. And, you get what you put in. So that was, sort of ingrained into me from a very, very young age. My mom was a barber, so she started cutting hair. She took a course with her friend. I think it was like a weekend course to cut hair, like a week long or two week long course. So she became a barber. So she met another immigrant who was an Italian immigrant named Camillo. And so she started working very closely with him. And, she was just able to learn a lot about society and, how things worked in, 1980s, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. It was a very, very different place. So yeah, for me growing up, going to school, there was, like I said, very limited Indian community. I grew up with white and black people. I mean, that was who my friend circle was at that time and still to this day. So, the Indian side of me really wasn't there. I mean, I had it at home in terms of the language and the religion and everything else. But, much of what I learned really was what was happening in all my other friends' households. So I was very fortunate to have a strong base, not only culturally for myself at home, but also understanding, how to sort of, move in society, at that young age. So, looking back now, very, very fortunate. One of my best friends' dad was a psychologist. Another one of my friends' dad was a salesman for Dixie cups, Lily cups of plastic or paper cups. Another one of my friends going up through junior high and high school owned a magazine called Progress Magazine, which was an entrepreneur-based magazine in Atlantic Canada. So I was immersed in a lot of different business, sales from a very young age. And so that's definitely what opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. I saw a lot of my dad as well as my friends' dads, being entrepreneurs. They were their own bosses, sort of called the shots as they wanted to, set their own schedules. So I thought that was very glamorous and very, very attractive to me. And then going through high school, I struggled through high school. It was just, I learned, I made posts about this on LinkedIn. I learned a very different way. I don't learn by sitting and reading a textbook. I literally learn through application and learning, through experience. So, I had a hard time in high school. It was very tough. What I wanted to do was, sort of hustle on my own and kind of figure out my own path. I'm burning CDs and selling them at school and, doing all that stuff where, you don't really realize that it's an entrepreneurial path and this journey. But, looking back now, it blows me away that that's what I was doing. So, growing up in Nova Scotia was, at times hard, particularly with, the limited stuff that we had. But again, like I said, came from a very loving home. My parents made me feel very, very special. My mom hugged and kissed me all the time and told me how great I was and how I could do anything that I wanted to, that I could put my mind to. And, I take that from a very young age to now. So very, very blessed.
You know what? I actually agree with that. My mom was the same way, right? You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. Like, I'm not sure how great of information that.
It's like, well, what does that mean, right?
I never did become an astronaut.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's so true.
But you know what? I think that is really uplifting and motivating. And I think on the other side of it, I think now we have more entrepreneurs probably than ever. And I definitely think a lot of them are millennials.
Totally.
And I think it really is because our parents were like, you can be anything you want to be.
It's so true. It's so funny that you say that, Kelly, because, growing up, I think in a typical immigrant household, particularly Indian household, it's become that professional, become that doctor, that lawyer, get an education and make something of your life. And at that time, my dad being an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship wasn't looked upon as a great thing. It was very looked down upon, particularly in the community that we grew up in, with, being surrounded by these doctors, lawyers, and, all these, professional people. It's so changed now where, the entrepreneurs is glorified and is celebrated now. Whereas before it wasn't, it wasn't something to smile about, particularly for many people. So, again, I think growing up through that, what my mom sees now compared to what she saw with my dad and at that time was totally different. She's so proud now that, I'm an entrepreneur and everything else, but that was looked down upon for them, kind of coming up. So it's such a stark difference now compared to, what I saw and what I thought was, this glamorous thing, which at that time clearly wasn't. And now is a celebrated glamorous thing where, you're your own guy and you're building something special. And, where would you be able to, you've got, your odd exception with a doctor or a surgeon that, has a brand or has created some sort of, technology, but at the end of the day, for the most part, it's the entrepreneur that's the one that's going to be the big winner at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's what kind of gives me my driving force now, but not knocking any profession, but this is what I chose. And this is what I absolutely love to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those things that almost every entrepreneur I talk to is like, I'm no longer employable.
It's so true. So true.
It's like this like weird transition that happens where it's like, I don't know if I can go back to doing that
I don't even know how it
anymore.
would work. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. You know, I often joke because my very first job in grade 10 was at a call center. And I didn't last a week. My first
Wow.
paycheck was like $72 or something. And my dad laughed at me. So my dad's like, I don't know what you're going to do. So he gave me a job in one of his many businesses at the time. And he was like, he was so unsure of what was going to happen with my life. He bought me a Canada Post outlet that I ran, for a year and a half, 2 years. I had to get up early in the morning, go run this. And I had a manager. And it just wasn't what I loved to do. But he was so concerned. He told my mom, he's like, regardless of what happens with Kapil's life, he's guaranteed $100,000 of income out of this business a year, and he's going to be good.
Yeah.
And it was just, again, it wasn't my passion. I just couldn't do it. But yeah, it was a constant fear of his. So I lost him about 12 years ago now, and I really wish that he was here to kind of see what we've done. I'm damn sure he'd be proud, of what we've created now. But I'm sure he's watching and smiling.
I'm damn sure he is proud and he is watching.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on
Yeah,
that.
sure. You're like, what? This is my son? Like, what?
Yeah,
I'm sure
no
that's exactly
kidding.
what he's saying. So
And I think that's all we can hope for as sons, right? Is like, of course we want to make our parents proud. Like
Of
that's the whole game, right?
So
my
true.
mom is still the most proud person on planet Earth than me.
absolutely. So true.
Dude, you've been an entrepreneur a long time. A really long time, the better part of 2 decades. So it's like at this point, that is your life. Like you haven't been employed in a really, really long time. And, it might be hard to take us back, but I do want you to take me back to that time, when you launched your consumer electronics business.
Right.
What was that like for you? What was the kick? What was the thing that kind of kicked you into that?
Yeah. So this is a really interesting story. So at that time, just coming out of high school, again, really uncertain of what my life looked like. I moved to Montreal after high school for just over a year with a buddy of mine. We had these great ambitions of starting a record label and starting a clothing line and doing all this stuff. But there was no real plan, no real structure, no real even understanding of what that looked like. It was just an idea, a concept, a thought. I'm big into hip hop, so I just wanted to be a record promoter and whatever else. So, I thought that was the glamorous lifestyle that that would lead me to that lifestyle. I came back to Nova Scotia, and my cousin, who was in Ontario, big influence, massive influence in my life. At that time, he was buying computer parts in China. He was shipping them to Ontario and was building out these custom PCs and, bringing screens, and he was selling them to local computer shops, wholesaling them, re-wholesaling B2B. Yeah. Had a couple government contracts with some schools, and he was able to supply some stuff. So we went to visit him. I visited him prior to that in like the late 90s, but, again, sort of lost touch, and he was doing his thing, and I was just a little kid, a young teenager, so there wasn't really much of a connection there. But after I came back, I went to visit him and sort of saw his operation, and it really opened my eyes to technology was always of interest to me. I came up in the computer age where I had one. Actually, funny enough, going back, he was one of the first ones who gave me a computer that was like it was a Pentium 133 with like 16 megabytes of RAM. It was like the cutting edge. It was the top of the top in my in my friend circle. It blew me away. I was like, wow, what's he doing? So fast forward a few years later, I went to visit him in Ontario. I sort of saw his operation, which is this giant warehouse. He had all these computer techs that were building computers and, putting them in nice boxes and getting them ready. And that opened my eyes to what what might be an opportunity for me. I remember he gave me a list. He sat me down at one of the empty offices and he gave me a list. And he's like, here's a list of 20 or 30 customers. So it was a cold list of his, a list that it was a dead list. So it was a list that he couldn't get any business out of. So he's like, if you can pull a sale out of this list, he's like, we'll talk. So I remember it was 8 a.m. and I'm getting on the phone. I'm calling. I don't have a pitch. It's super unpolished. I'm just, talking randomly. I've got a couple computers to sell. People hang up on me. No, not interested, not interested. And so we went for lunch. We took a break for lunch. We went for lunch. And he's like, hey, how's it going? I said, no, it's not going well at all. I said, people are hanging up on me. They're so rude. And I was super green to the industry. So I had no idea, what to sort of expect. He's like, you know what? He's like, keep it up. He's like, keep just banging those phone calls. And he had a couple more hours after lunch. So we get back after lunch and I make 10 or 15 more calls. And then finally one guy's like, hey, I'll take 5 monitors and 2 PCs. And my heart was just jumping out of my chest. I'm like, oh my God. I said, okay. I wrote it up and then I hung up. I said, I'll call you back. And I went to Anil's office and I'm like, hey, I got a deal done. And he was smiling. And at that time he told me, he's like, this is a dead list. He's like, I didn't expect you to make one sale out of this list and you did it. And I was like blown away. And that day he gave me an email address with my name at the extension of his company name. And I was just on cloud nine. I couldn't believe it. So I went back to Nova Scotia and he set me up. He's like, hey, I'm going to send you some inventory, start making some phone calls in Nova Scotia, find some local spots. And that was the beginning of this massive journey. And then fast forward years, I mean, I was buying container loads of inventory, had my own warehouse. I did that for the better part of 13 or 14 years. And, there were some highs and lows kind of figuring out the industry, but I found a few great suppliers here in Alberta. I was in Nova Scotia at the time, but funny enough, I had some of my solid suppliers out of Alberta. So I was buying inventory from them, exporting it to the US and exporting it to, all over the place. And then from there, I was able to grow that business, into government contracts, into buyback programs. We dealt with Costco US for years, buying their return inventory, Walmart US, Sam's Club. So it blossomed over the next 10 years into a multi-million dollar business. And just a volume. Yeah, it was a pretty crazy way to start and a pretty crazy way to end it for sure.
That's an amazing story, dude. Yeah. That really is a rags to riches story right there.
It truly is. It truly is. And I didn't know what would come of it. I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to make one sale with this. And it all started with that one sale and just, persevering through it, pushing through.
I love that. I love that persevering through it. I'm a huge advocate for you don't see success coming. You don't, really right? Don't. There's no people like to make the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. And don't get me wrong, I'm a 5-year and 10-year planner. I also recognize that it's probably going to go completely different, but I'm a dreamer. Yeah. So for me, it makes me feel good in the moment where it's like, I know what's going to happen. But the reality is it never goes to plan.
It doesn't.
And opportunities always come out of left field. The best things that have ever happened to me, even this podcast, I never saw it coming. It was like, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. I'm going to try it. But a month before that, it wasn't even on the table.
Wasn't even the thought, right? Well, it's so funny. So we're currently going through some deep due diligence with some investor groups right now, pretty far down the process. And, oftentimes we hear, especially from the banks or, anywhere you're trying to, find some money, it's like, well, what's the next 3 or 5 years look like? And it's like, I can't tell you what the next 12 months looks like. So I can kind of guess and, kind of give you an estimation on what I feel would be the best path. But my God, Kelly, what I've experienced month over month, curveballs come, plans change. The overall plan's obviously, that one, but the intricate parts of the plan are always changing. So yeah, no, I definitely get that for sure.
Totally. When I started Capital Business Development, the idea was that I'm just going to do fractional BD around the country for everyone who needs it, right? And it's like that. I bet I do less fractional BD than anything else I do now. And I never
saw that coming.
It wasn't even coming. Yeah, exactly. And the fractional BD I do now, I do it at 20 hours here or whatever, right? For a completely different rate, a completely different thing than I ever thought I would.
Crazy.
And now my passion has really evolved into coaching. Yeah. I absolutely love coaching.
I love it.
I'm not even sure that I knew what coaching was when I launched Capital.
Well, it's funny, these things evolve, right? It's like, things change and pivot and evolve, and fun stuff comes out of it sometimes.
Exactly. I guess what I'm trying to convey to our listeners today is don't feel bad when things don't go to plan, because here's the thing. I bet you the plan that's coming for you is even better than you could have ever planned for. That's the funny thing about it.
Kelly, let me tell you, even if we did this podcast the first couple of times when it was scheduled to now, my God, so much has changed and so much wasn't in the plan. And again, truly honored and humbled that, things have gone the way they have. But you're so right. Things do not go to plan for the most part. I think if you try to stick to that plan, I think following a plan is crucial. And, it's definitely part of the route and the road to success. But again, you've got to have a high level of, adaptability. You have to be able to pivot, move quickly. Things often change. Like I said, the deal that came through this morning, it was 8-9 months in the works. And, when we got the first no's and it's not going to work or not the time or not ready, you don't really think, you just think that's the end of the world. And, oh my God, should I? But, I pivoted, you quickly adapt, you move forward. And, if you put the right energy out, the right energy comes back. So it's about just kind of figuring it out as you go, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's more important is that you're putting effort in to move the needle every day.
Correct.
What that effort is up to you, right? It's up to you and your plan.
Exactly.
But I think as long as you are making those connections, I know you hustle. I know you pick up the phone and make those calls and try to make those introductions and book those meetings, because that's what's going to lead to future growth for you, right? Yeah. if you don't do that, you can't expect 3 years down the line for just miracles to come out of nowhere,
So
right?
true.
The miracles
So
come.
it's not going to just show up.
No, they come from a daily effort, a daily grind. You don't see them coming, right? You can't see the opportunity. But what I can tell you is that if you put in the effort daily, the opportunity will present itself.
Absolutely. It's funny. A friend of mine just transitioned from corporate banking to become a mortgage broker. So he's just building his business now, trying to get deals. Really, I told him, I said, before the deals, it's all about networking. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to get to every single meeting, to every person that could potentially throw some business your way. And I gave him just the analogy that I ride with all the time, which is the farmer. It's, when you're planting your seeds, you've got to just relentlessly water those seeds. And you've got to monitor them. You've got to watch for bugs. You've got to watch for all these things, right? And then when your seed pops, it's like, okay, now you've got to really nurture it and take care of it. So, it's kind of an old adage, but I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's, it makes total sense. And it's something that you've got to really put that, and you don't see those wins, a lot of the effort that you put through, you're not going to see immediate results. You're not going to see that, kind of, blossoming at that time. You've really got to be just really on it and just day after day. And you'll surprise yourself. At the end of the day, you'll surprise yourself that one day you're like, oh, wow, here are the fruits of my labor. And it's worked out.
What I always tell people about business development is that it's not an immediate gratification thing. It's a long game. It really is. And like you said, it's about planting as many seeds today so that 6 months, 8 months, 9 months down the line, that's when that fruit is going to come back.
Exactly.
But you have to be known. The biggest problem is with any company is you're unknown, right? And so unless you're out there knocking doors, introducing yourself, the odds of you getting them in that exact moment with that exact problem is slim to none. It's amazing when it happens. Don't get me wrong. I'm always excited when a client's like, oh yeah, we'll take that. We'll take 2, right?
Exactly. Oh, wow.
But that is not what typically happens. What typically happens is now they know who Kapil is. Now they know what Naturemary is. They know, what Kapil can provide, how much product he can provide, where he can provide it. And the next time they're doing that giant order, they make sure that Kapil and Naturemary is on the list, right?
So true.
But that might be 6 months from now. That might be 8 months. That might be a year. Walmart might be waiting to make their next big purchases, right?
So true.
And it's not going to happen on your timeline. But it's not going to happen at all if you don't even try to make that connection.
And that's such a great point, Kelly. So I follow, everyone knows Jake Carls from Midday Squares, and he is a selfless promoter, constantly just promoting. And he's built a personal brand, but behind that personal brand is an amazing brand, of what the true mission is of his efforts and his work. And I'm not that type of guy where I just go out there and I'm just like crazy with it, but it works. And it's the promotion that you need to do. So I feel that, I definitely have an aspect of that for sure. But I feel that that's such an important part. I saw a meme this morning. It was like a Seinfeld clip, and they were talking about how business owners in 2024 have to be promoters. You've got to get on TikTok. You've got to get on Instagram. And it's like, well, when did this happen? Right. But, it's the day and age that we live in, and it's the world that we live in. And, you've got to be just relentlessly pushing forward to promote yourself, promote your brand, promote your story. Even with us, a part of what we do is based on Sonia's story. And, I'm constantly advocating for Sonia, for women's health, talking about that story. And that's really usually what leads to opening some doors. So you've got to promote. That is it. Push.
Yeah. And you're right. Like there's been a huge shift into personal branding in 2024.
Totally.
2023, I like to say was like the year of AI, because that's like, I feel like my first year of this show, everyone wanted to talk about AI. That was the thing, right?
Yeah.
New Year hit. All people wanted to talk about was personal branding. Everyone I talked to was like, you need a personal brand. You got to build your personal brand. And I'm like, what is a personal brand? But I've talked to enough people now that I'm working on mine. You're working on yours. You got people out there like Jay Carls and just killing it with their personal branding, right? There's so many great people doing it. But you're right. It is critical. I'm not sure when the switch happened. I'm not even sure that it happened in 2023. I feel like it might have happened a long time ago. And we're just playing catch up.
Well, it's funny because, I follow so many brands online, and, a lot of times you will see a founder talking about whether it's just them just talking about the product or whatever, but, they are doing that. I mean, they're definitely, self-promoting. And I think there's a level of trust that's built behind a brand, or even just behind a mission, or, whatever their path looks like. But it all starts with that personal story. Even now when I'm consulting for companies, a big part of even me onboarding anybody is that, well, what's the story behind this brand? Why should the consumer care? especially if it's a competitive product that's sitting on the shelf next to someone that might be, $1 or $2 cheaper. What's the reason why that consumer wants to buy that product? Why are they following you into that store? Building that personal brand and building that story is so, so important.
Yes, yes. And, you've done an excellent job with this. And, I just want to just say, dude, like, you're super brave. People say that I'm out there because I have a podcast, right? But I am not out there in the same way. I'm not hopping on a camera, taking pictures of myself, looking like I haven't slept for 3 days, right? Like, that isn't my life, at least not yet. But I have struggled. I've struggled with my own anxieties and fears about posting too much about my own personal life. And I see people like you out there, like Jake out there, like Mitch out there, who are out there putting themselves out there in ways that like is very inspiring. But like, I just want to say, like, where does that come from? How did you get comfortable with bearing it all to the world?
So yeah, great question. So I've kind of always been that guy. Like, I always use Sonia as the reference as well, because she's the total opposite. And she's like, well, you're the mouthpiece for everything, always. So she's like, you go out there and, do all the promotion. For me, honestly, I'm an out there kind of guy. I just love, socializing. I love talking. I love just being part of different circles. I network a lot. Again, in my previous business, I neglected to do a lot of that. And I think that hurt me in terms of the time that I lost. And I don't look at it as a loss. I look at it as now looking back and saying, hey, look, these are some things I could have done differently. But for me, I like to have the energy out there. I feed off of other people's energy. A big thing for me, Kelly, is that when I leave the room, I want to make somebody else feel better. I want them to feel, I want them to feel like I feel at the end of the conversation. And I feel that, 99% of the time, if I don't annoy you, I probably uplifted you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times Sonia tells me, she's like, oh, you're just so positive, and where do you get it from? And it's a driving force for me. It's like, I give that to myself. I do that for myself. I don't find, it's hard for me to find in other places. I find them from within. I'm a big positive believer of, manifesting my own thoughts. I think that, if I can think it, I can dream it, I can do it. And that's a big, big driving force for me, honestly. So I don't know where it comes from. It's just, I do it for myself first. And I'm just happy that others can kind of soak that in a little bit and take something from that. So yeah, it's definitely something that, that I do for myself first, but I'm happy that I'm able to help others.
It's incredible, and your energy is infectious. Just want to say that. I love that. Don't change that about you. But, at this point, I've had the pleasure of interviewing probably about 140 people by the time this show comes out. And every once in a while, I get somebody that, and I try to jive with everybody, but it's just not always possible. Not every interview is built equally. Not every human connection is built equally. But I can tell you that I was thoroughly looking forward to this interview every time. And I feel like we've at this point booked this interview 4 or 5 times. And I was just like, I can't wait to talk with Kapil because I love your energy. I loved our very first connection, our very first talk. And I knew it was going to be a great show. Right? And
Me too. I've been waiting as well. Yeah.
But you don't get that with everybody. And it's funny too, because me, like I said, I'm getting better. I'm working on it. I'm putting myself out there, but I'm fighting my own personal challenges with doing that. That has not been who I am. I'm typically very introverted as a person. I'm like the most introverted BD guy you've probably ever met, which is a very weird mix. I'm really good at it, but at the same time, I still get very uncomfortable in a lot of situations that I have to overcome, right? But yeah, it's awesome because I do try to connect as best as I can with people, and sometimes it just doesn't fly. The reality is there's shows that just are not very good, and it sucks, and it is what it is, and they go out and we go on to the next one, right? But every once in a while, I do get a really great interview, and I just want to say thank you because this is definitely one of them.
My pleasure, Kelly. My pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I've been watching so many of your interviews, and I love your energy. I love just it's funny. We have a thing called the vibe check at the office where it's, regardless of your credentials, your experience, doesn't matter what it is, there has to be a feeling. If that feeling's not there, it's not going to work. Yeah. And I felt that the first time I met you. I'm like, you know what? Like, your energy's good. It feels right. And I was really looking forward to this. So no, thank you.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you. I know. I want you to lead me into it. So you launched Naturemary in 2020. Like, oh my gosh, talk to me. Well, tell me the story of Naturemary.
Yeah. So Naturemary was born out of a need for Sonia. So Sonia suffers with postmenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's called PMDD. And essentially it affects a very small population. It's less than 5% of women. It's like PMS on steroids. So every month it's cyclical. It's just debilitating pain. It's a chronic condition. So it's pain, anxiety, depression, just mass inflammation in the body. So 2018, 2019-ish, Sonia was going through one of her monthly cycles. And I had some CBD in a container. So I gave it to her and I'm like, hey, you need to try this. So she tried it. And then within moments, she got her vision back. She was able to speak. A lot of the symptoms had started to calm. So Sonia's a biologist and a neuroscientist. So her first thing was, well, what did this do with my brain?
What just happened?
Yeah, what just happened? Let me research this. So it opens up this large wormhole of discovering plant cannabinoids, cannabis, all of the things that are just amazing with this plant. So she discovers that CBD works for her. She starts just kind of tinkering with CBD, making herself tinctures, making herself some pain products. At that time, she had an aesthetics business. So she had added some CBD inside some facial products and stuff like that. So she's using that on people after she would do their eyebrows and there was some puffiness and some inflammation. She would calm that down. And so people were like, well, wow, this is an amazing product. So Sonia was just giving it away. She's like, here, just take it, take it. And so I told Sonia, hey, hold on a second here. You discovered something here that there's clearly a need for this. So I told her, I said, well, listen, CBD is fantastic, but legalization was just happening 2018, 2019. So I'm like, we're operating in a regulated industry here. That's, not really where our target consumers is shopping. So I told her, I'm like, well, listen, CBD is fantastic, but we have to find an alternative to CBD. Let's find something that works like CBD, but is not heavily, regulated. It's not, completely controlled by, where it can be sold and how it's accessed. And again, another wormhole was open. And so she discovers, through her research, it took about a year and a half, but she discovered plant terpenes. And essentially plant terpenes are the aromatics in spices and herbs. So when you cut into an orange, when you smell, that's terpenes. When you smell a rose, when you smell black pepper, those are terpenes. So terpenes have bioactive, the bioactive molecules that actually have benefit to our body. So she discovered one particular terpene that comes from cloves, black pepper, hops, and it acts like CBD. It actually activates the same receptors on and inside our body as CBD, but not from cannabis. So this is sort of our aha moment. We're like, okay, wow, well, we've discovered a plant compound that's acting like CBD that sort of is helping with our mission and her mission really at the time, but not heavily controlled. And so Sonia, again, creates a proprietary formula with that terpene, with some other, essential oils and other terpenes. And we've created this blend called bioterpene. So again, it was this big aha moment for us. We're like, well, wow, okay, well, this is, it was a lot of testing going on. No real trials at the time. Right now, we're kind of, undertaking some preclinical, clinical trials. But at that time, it was really just anecdotal. There was a lot of other studies that were out there around some of these plant compounds and these ingredients. But so it was just a lot about testing. So we don't use them as our medicinal focused ingredients yet, but we know where the magic's happening, right? So we started with a body care line. The body care line was really strong in the beginning, and then COVID hit. And we're like, well, wow, okay, well, what do we do now? So it was pivot time again. We're like, well, how do we fix this problem? We had a lot of wholesale accounts that were like small mom and pop operations, hair clinics, skin clinics. Kelly, 99% of them went out of business during COVID. They just shut down. No. There was no business. And I told Sonia, well, what are we going to do? I said, we've got a small, direct-to-consumer base that's buying our products, but not enough to sustain the business and not enough, especially to grow the business. So again, I analyzed the market. I'm like, well, what's open right now during COVID? And at that time, it was grocery and it was Walmart. So I said, well, we're not going to get into Walmart with these products yet, but let's go target some grocery. So we walked into a Sobeys. There was a Sobeys across the street from our house in Royal Oak in the Northwest. And as we walk in, Sonia just, where's the manager? Who can I speak to? There's a small little wellness section there. There's a small little pharmacy there. And so we met the manager, and the manager's like, here's a name and a phone number. Give this guy a call. And that guy was Gary Hughes. He's the local manager for Sobeys, and he's instrumental in bringing on local companies into their local program. And I have a Sobeys already has a close part of my heart. It's a Nova Scotia-based company. Growing up, that's where my parents had shopped, for our groceries and everything else. So Sobeys has always been very close to my heart. And so, Gary meets us, and he's like, well, your products are a little bit more premium, a little bit, outpriced, but I'll give you guys a shot. So he gives us a vendor number. He's like, here, go start talking to the stores. We got out there, started talking to the stores, started getting listings, started getting orders. And it's what saved our business. Sobeys literally saved our business at that time during COVID. And so coming out of COVID, it was like, okay, now really identifying some of these markets and some of these, categories that we want to fit in. And that's what sort of spiraled our company to to start growing in the retail channel. So fast forward a few years now, we just signed the national Sobeys deal. So we're going coast to coast in all the pharmacies with our pain relief products.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just, it was a crazy, crazy story of being able to survive through COVID, and then not only survive, be able to grow the business through COVID. And then obviously coming back out of COVID, it's been just a snowball effect for us. So yeah, that's how we started coming through a very tricky time where a lot of brands were dying, and we flourished.
My gosh, walk me through, okay? Because it's one thing to get your product on a shelf, right? It's a whole nother thing to have a consumer walk by and know what they're buying.
Absolutely.
Walk me through that part, because I'm sure you took the win. You're like, yeah, we're on Sobe shelves, but like without the grand public knowing about Naturemary, how do you get them to buy Naturemary and not, the product sitting right next to it?
Totally. So we really struggled with this in the beginning. Like you said, we thought that getting on that shelf was the big victory. The big victory is getting off that shelf and having those reorders and that retention happening. And that's something that we didn't really understand in the beginning, because we really dealt with a lot of smaller locations that were very, very concise, had a very concise customer base, and a very small offering on their shelves. For us now to be competing in a large big box was extremely difficult. We didn't know anything about that. We didn't know we had to be marketing outside. We thought our customers would follow us into those stores. You've got to convince that customer to go follow you into that store. So if you don't have, and again, this is what I consult with many of my brands now, is that if you don't have a strong following that's going to follow you into that retailer, or B, having a marketing budget to be able to educate the consumer to where that product is placed on the shelf, these are the two most important things when it comes to being in brick and mortar retail. So Kelly, we really struggled with that in the beginning. Our retention was low, the reorders were low. We hired a broker at the time, which we thought was, the sales and marketing aspect of it. But really that was only just getting us more shelves. And then at that point, stretching ourselves further, thinner. And we're like, okay, well, now we've got, more stores, but now we've got to increase our budget to be able to get those products off the shelf. We really struggled with that for the first 2 years, 2022, 2023. We really did struggle with that. We realized that, we were in a highly competitive category, which was beauty and skincare. We had a wellness perspective to our products, but what does that take? It takes marketing and education, which costs money, which we obviously didn't have at the time. Kind of restructuring sort of some of our listings. We spent a lot of time throughout 2023 in R&D and reformulation of the pain relief products, which we knew was sort of our value prop as being an alternative to CBD. And in the beginning, explaining that in a body care or a beauty product doesn't really make any sense, and it's costing a lot of money in marketing and education. So a previous broker that we had didn't really tell us any of this. They're like, well, listen, if you don't have a marketing budget, you're not going to be successful. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean if I don't have a marketing budget? We had to really learn that, the hard way. So we lost listings. We pulled back from certain listings where we felt that the product just didn't make sense, sitting on some of those shelves. And that was the hard part. I think going through a lot of that journey, again, learning and pivoting was extremely, extremely difficult for us, because, you think you get on that shelf and that's the ultimate win. You think you land the whale of a distributor, that's the ultimate win. Dude, you got to roll your sleeves up and get to work, because now you've got to really talk to those stores, work out their planning, understanding who your target customer is, who their target consumer is, and do they even mesh? Do they even blend? And at that time, we didn't know any of that. Building a customer profile, understanding who our target consumer is, it's something that we just didn't do. We just thought, okay, anyone's going to come buy this because it's a great product. So we say, but that's not really the case. So a lot of pivots, a lot of learns, a lot of money spent, a lot of money lost, but a lot of lessons learned. And that's a big thing for us now. So whether it's radio, TV, print, we have a very, very strong digital ad campaigns that are starting now, not only for e-commerce, but also consumer education. Where can they find these products in these retailers? So that's been a really big focus for us now in 2024 and really 2025 going into the new year. Q1, Q2, we've built a massive budget just to spend on ad spend. To educate that consumer and drive them into the retailer. So a lot of lessons learned on how to get it off the shelf. Very important.
Yeah. Well, if you build it, they will not necessarily come. It's funny too.
Because I'm like, oh, we build it, they'll come. But no, not the case at all.
And it's crazy because it's just as relevant for like a show, just like this, right? I can have 1,000 great episodes, but if I'm not working every day to educate the public that it's out here, that something like this is available to them on a weekly basis, they're not going to likely just stumble upon it. Actually, we got kind of lucky because by naming the show The Business Development Podcast, whenever somebody searched business development, the algorithm
Ah.
popped us up. And I'll be honest, I want to say that that was intentional. It wasn't. I knew that I wanted a show and that name was available. And I was like, well, if it's the business development podcast, people will obviously listen. And I was right.
Perfect.
But it was not like a concise plan. I know when I saw the name, I was like, well, now I have to do it. Right. But like I didn't start out with that plan in mind.
Well, that's amazing. It's nice when things work out like that, right?
Yeah. But it does not mean that is the only way that we get people to the show, right? Like I'm having to spend consistently on Spotify, on, podcast platforms, on Meta and Facebook ads, right? You're right. It's an education campaign. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you sell a product, a service, whatever it is, people are not just going to be banging your door down. You have to be actively teaching them that you exist.
So true. So true.
Out of the stuff that you mentioned, what has given you the best ROI on your marketing spend with a product?
So fully loaded question for sure. I've really been focused. I think my strength comes from large scale wholesale and B2B. That's really the world that I came from. So for me, the easiest path, the path of least resistance to me is picking up the phone, sending out a wholesale order and getting it on a shelf. That's the easiest part for me. I thrive there. What's difficult, obviously, now that I'm learning is getting that product off the shelf and sort of what we need to sort of focus on going forward when it comes to customer retention, education, retention, and keeping the retailer happy. A big focus for us now going 2025, many of my retailers are not happy to hear this, but is direct to consumer e-commerce. That is the number one place where we know that our ad dollar is being spent to educate a consumer, and then we're able to drive that traffic immediately to the website and then allow the website to do the final push through for the sale, and then obviously get them into some funnel. So, what we've noticed now is that the immediate ROI for us is really ad spend. When we're doing our digital marketing now, we've noticed that it's the most engagement, the most question and answer sort of back and forth with customers. Majority of what we see in many ads is if they're not buying online, where can I find this in a store near me? I live in Saskatchewan. I live in Moose Jaw. I live in Ontario. I live in rural Quebec. We're seeing that on our ads all the time now. And that's what's been leading to direct sales online, as well as being able to send them to a retailer, that we're listed with. The nice thing about now having these national accounts, so when you've got a lot of the one-off, sort of smaller accounts, particularly through some of the distributors that we deal with, a lot of smaller accounts that are just one location. And it's really hard to market to that one location because, we would spend endless amounts of money trying to figure that out. The nice thing about having a national account is that I can say, hey, go to your local Sobeys, Safeway, Thrifties, Drugs, IGA, and go pick this product up because I know that it's there. So that I know now going forward is going to be helping us a lot to be able to drive specific traffic to locations that I know the product is sitting in. So the immediate ROI that we've seen right away has been the digital marketing. We are now participating in some of the flyer campaigns and, the seasonal marketing that many of the retailers do, but we haven't really seen the immediate ROI on that. But I think when I speak of ROI, it's also keeping and appeasing my partners because, participating in part of their marketing campaigns and plans shows that we're committed to them. It shows that we're committed to the long-term journey here and the long-term goals that we both share. So we're definitely dipping our toes into that a little bit now, just to, again, appease the retailer, but also, hope that does lead to some long-term, gain for both of us. Yeah. But at the end of the day, digital marketing is the path of least resistance that we're finding right now.
Well, and I can see that because you can immediately look at how many people buy your product, right? Like when you're doing radio ads or whatever else, TV.
There's no data.
Right? Maybe they do go to Sobeys. You don't know until Sobeys places another order, and hopefully it's a big one.
Correct. You're so right. It's really hard. It's really hard to collect that data. That data oftentimes really doesn't exist, and you've got to try to find it.
Yeah. Talk to me about when you took it to like a digital ad spend. Did you guys end up hiring like a company to help you out with that? For me, I still struggle with that. Digital ads was never my world. I'm learning it every single day. And so I gain lessons whenever I have this kind of conversation.
Totally.
Of the digital ad spend, what approach did you take? Do you run Google ads? Like what has worked the best for Naturemary?
Very, very exciting to share this. So in the beginning, we went through so many agencies, burned through so much budget, trying to figure things out. What I know now, I wish I knew then, compared to sort of some of the agencies that I did hire that were really just out there to spend my money and hope for the best. Preparation, obviously, making sure that your website or whatever your medium and your form is optimized for that viewer, for that traffic. We're really fortunate right now. We just partnered with a agency. They don't like to call themselves an agency. They're really a growth partner. They've actually invested in us. So not only are we engaging them as an agency for digital ads, but they're also, invested in our exit, in our future, which is really exciting. These guys
Amazing.
are just killers. They are the top of the top. These guys actually came through a friend of mine. So a friend of mine owns a product-based company. He is strictly e-commerce. He's doing about 4 million a month right now in revenue with these guys.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
this has been another story of 8 months to a year of trying to get these guys on board. Their retainer was so massive that it was just something that we couldn't afford. We sort of left it on the back burner. We're like, hey, well, we'll come back to you guys when we're ready. And I was really only interested in them because of the proof and the fact that they're able to do this. They're very selective on the brands that they bring on, so they don't bring on just anybody. They manage 6 to 8 accounts a year or every 2 years. They're focused on exiting within 36 to 48 months with that company. Really kind of building it and then exiting it, selling it, and then just kind of recycling that model. So we just engaged with them. They came on as a partner, so they've invested in us. And it's like we're just getting started with them right now. So we're in week 3. We're week 3.
Wow.
We're just testing digital creatives right now. We're doing commercials right now. I'll share some stuff with you after the call, and I'll send it over to you. Cool. But it is impressive, and really, they have the track record to prove it. Like they've done it before. Yeah. They do it continuously, consistently, and that's what we're really, really excited about right now. So, to be able to not only drive the revenue that I'm looking at driving here, they're pretty confident we can get to $1 million a month, in the next 12 months, which is really exciting. But not only that, it's really about retaining that customer. And that customer data is what is crucial in terms of the growth of the business. Not only do we know who our target is, but now how do we nurture them? And how do we make sure that they stay lifelong customers? Are we offering additional product offers that can help in different areas of their life? So say if they're a pain relief user of ours, we've got anti-aging face oils that can help with that, help with that same consumer. So we're trying to find those overlaps. And so that a lot of that testing is happening right now, but we're extremely excited about this partner, and we know that it's going to take us to the moon where we know they can take us. So very excited.
Well, that's amazing. And while we're going to the moon, I want to spend some time chatting about a company growing as fast as Naturemary is, because I think we all look at success and we're like, oh, that would be amazing. But talk to me about what it is like to manage a company growing as quickly as Naturemary. Like you said, you could be doing $1 million a month in product. Heck, by the time this show is out, what has it been like to have to learn skills to manage growth like that? What are some of the lessons you've learned while growing the company at this scale?
Yeah, so those lessons are happening right now. So Sonia and I again had a conversation this morning about she needs a full-time QA person at our second facility now. We've just recently received our GMP certification from Health Canada. So we were able to open our second facility where we control all of our manufacturing now, which is exciting. Massive, massive win just over the last month and a half. But yeah, operations-wise, it's very, very difficult. Sonia and I are constantly wearing 100 hats. We're juggling so many responsibilities. As we're growing and scaling at this pace, this is why, I think, bringing on a capital partner right now for us, not only for the money aspect, is really for the strategic growth aspect. That's really what I'm after, even more than money right now. I think that obviously money helps, it helps you prepare for all the things that you're going to need, while you're scaling. But at the end of the day, it's really about being focused on, a team that can really help sustain the growth. So right now, we know that we need a full-time QA person. I really need a full-time office manager that's really able to bridge the gap between my sales and marketing side and Sonia's production and R&D side. So that's really some of the gaps that we've identified immediately. We know there's some immediate hires that need to happen right now. It's just about timing, financing and funding and all of that. So yeah, it's a tricky part of scaling. You don't want to go too fast because obviously you don't have the infrastructure behind you to support that growth. But you also don't want to move too slow where you miss out on opportunities. So it's, again, a delicate balance right now, Kelly, that we're facing right now. So we've got a couple, we have part-time and full-time staff on the production side. On the sales side, I've been very fortunate to be able to bring on a commission-based sales team. I've got 21 guys on my sales team right now that are just rocking and rolling. They're getting very, very healthy and hefty commissions, but, I obviously want to reward the work. So yeah, it's about kind of identifying the gaps, identifying some of the weaker points, within the chain and within the cycle, and then be able to sort of fill those gaps. But yeah, we're going through that right now. And like I said, it's, I'm always up for the challenge. It's always fun for me to kind of figure these things out, but I wouldn't say that it's not painful. It is painful, and trying to figure it out is definitely a challenge.
My gosh, I was going to say, I think every lesson I've learned is the hard way. So I
so true.
Feel for you.
So true.
I know we have a lot of people listening right now, Kapil, who are like, okay, this sounds cool. Like, I like the idea of this terpene-based, medical products, health products. but what are they? I know everyone's asking, like, what are these things? I think we need to order some, but what are they?
Yeah,
so can you
absolutely.
introduce us to your product lines?
For sure. So as I mentioned before, we started with body care. So our body care line is the typical stuff that you'd expect to see. So some face oils, face sprays, a couple of unique products. We just won the Made in Alberta award for a unique beauty product with our bath teas. And essentially what the bath teas are, it's a combination product. It's a big tea bag. It's full of salts, clays, botanicals, essential oils, and our terpene blend. So essentially it's a bath product, but it really offers a relaxation, de-stressing, just really kind of helping with a lot of that pain and, some of the stuff that we carry around with us all day long. Where we're transitioning, what I'm really excited about is our pain relief products. So we use our terpene blends as an alternative to CBD, as I mentioned, and those products really target muscle and joint pain, inflammation. I've got one right here called Therapy. This is our pain relief roll-on. And this is a really, really amazing product, really for athletes, people that have kind of chronic conditions, such as arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is really one of the bigger focuses that we have. Muscle and joint pain, just average aches and pains. We have 4 new SKUs, or three new pain relief SKUs that we've just launched. One's a recovery pain stick, so it's a salve stick. Our rescue cream is a cream/skincare product. We've got a little mini headache roller called Headies. So all these products are all focused on inflammation control, pain relief, and really addressing a very, very large market. Pain starts at 30, 35, as I'm sure you know, Kelly. Something that I never thought of.
I'm 35. I have a 9-month-old kid. I don't think I've had a great sleep in at least 9 months. And every day I wake up a little sore. So I think I might need to, we might need to talk.
I'm gonna send you a nice package full of our pain relief and some oil blends that are going to help with that sleep for sure. But honestly, 35 plus is really our target demographic. We're now with the pain stick, we're moving into more of the athlete, active lifestyle, recovery sector. But that's really what we're focused on. We're really focused on helping people manage their pain and making their day-to-day just a lot better. So that's really what our main focus is.
And you mentioned that anybody listening can ultimately just order this directly through your website. What is that website?
Yeah, so our website is naturemary.com. There's a lot of cool bundles there, a lot of cool different packages. Join our mailing list, so save right away on the first order. And if you're not an e-commerce kind of buyer, we're available close to 1,000 locations across the country. As you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, Kelly, our store locator needs to be updated. It's not fully reflective of all the locations that we're in, but always feel free to message our customer service, let them know where you are, and we'll be happy to find you a location. But e-commerce is the fastest way. We've got the fastest processing times, and I'm very proud of that. And we've got some of the fastest shipping times as well. So oftentimes in the West, people will receive their orders the same day.
Awesome. And I know we have like a pretty large American and worldwide listenership, right?
Awesome.
Are these able to be exported?
Absolutely. So the nice thing about being an alternative to CBD is that we have no restrictions when it comes to being able to ship worldwide. A big part of our value prop is being able to open up markets that otherwise were, banning cannabis imports and exports. So, that's why we're receiving offers and letters of intent from Vietnam, from China, from Singapore, a lot of countries Middle East, where, you just wouldn't be able to find a CBD product. The nice thing that I like to say is that we're TSA and CBSA compliant, so you're able to fly with our products. We're all under the threshold of liquid, and we're also, all natural and not controlled substance. So, we ship a lot to the US. We ship to the UK. We had some orders coming yesterday from the UK, Germany, Middle East. all over the place. So, to everyone listening out there, we're definitely available, global, worldwide.
Amazing. And you know what? I know there's people listening right now who are like, you know what? I could use some weekly inspiration. I think I want to follow Kapil. What's the best way for people to reach out to you directly?
Definitely. Follow me on LinkedIn. I always say I'm super, super active on LinkedIn. I post almost daily. I've got my scheduled posts that go. Oftentimes I'll make up a post that day of just a thought that I have in my mind. My name's Kapil Kalra, Kapil Kalra. You'll probably pretty easily be able to find me. You'll see that I'm the president of Naturemary. Follow me on LinkedIn, DM me. I'm always down to talk and chat. I always answer every single call, email, text message, DM. So I'm not the guy to leave you on red. I will absolutely answer you for sure.
Oh my gosh, dude. This has been, it's been an honor, honestly. I've been looking forward to this, I feel like, for at least a year. And just thank you for taking the time today to chat with me.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for being patient. I was hoping that you were going to say, you know what, you're not welcome here anymore and move on. But no, Kelly, man, you've been amazing. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. I'm definitely going to be a sponsor here pretty soon, I'm sure. So we're definitely going to help you out there. And, like I said, you give so much to the business community and, people that just want to learn and want to hear. And I think it's really part of the ecosystem to be able to support each other. So let's keep the combo flowing. And I'm always here for you, man. Always.
Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate it. No, it is a community, right? Like the reality is all of us are in it together. And I would say, especially here in like Edmonton, Alberta, Calgary,
For sure.
my gosh, we have an amazing entrepreneurial community.
Totally.
And like any way that I can support that, I want
really,
to.
really appreciate it, man. You're doing, like I said, you're doing an amazing job. You interview some pretty amazing people that are doing some incredible things. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just honored to be in that mix. So I appreciate it.
Well, you belong, man. You're there just as much as everyone else.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Until next time, this has been episode 254 of the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.
Hey, rock stars, you've been trying to build momentum, but the leads feel scattered, your message isn't landing, and growth feels like guesswork. You're not alone. That's exactly why I created the Business Development Mastery Accelerator. And now the Builders class, our second official cohort, is open. Over 6 weeks, you'll gain real systems, dial in your personal brand, and finally build a business development engine that actually works. One that feels aligned, sustainable, and repeatable. We start on July 15th and spots are limited. Join the Builders class at kellykennedy.official.com and let's build this together.